The negotiation chamber aboard the neutral station orbiting KRYSS Velta felt oppressive despite its sterile, polished surfaces. Evelyn Carter adjusted her stance, her boots clicking on the smooth floor. The black hole loomed outside the viewport, its swirling event horizon a constant reminder of the high stakes. She stood at the head of the human delegation, composed of scientists, diplomats, and a few uneasy military officers. Across from her, the holographic projection of High Marshal Zillan Viaro loomed larger than life. The reptilian Urigani's slitted eyes scanned her with icy disdain. His scaled, muscular arms were crossed as he spoke in a voice that resonated like grinding stones. Lieutenant Carter, I will be plain. The Empire has no patience for defiance. Humanity's integration is inevitable. Kneel now, or face eradication. Evelyn's jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady. Integration isn't inevitable when it's a euphemism for enslavement. We've seen what your integration does to worlds. Stripped resources. Cultures erased. We won't submit. The room fell silent. Behind Evelyn, one of her aides shifted nervously, but she didn't falter. Viaro's sneer deepened. Your defiance is predictable, as is your misplaced confidence. The Empire does not negotiate with pests who confuse survival for strength. Evelyn took a step forward, her chin raised. Predictable or not, we won't back down. You may have conquered 1,000 species, but humans don't kneel. We fight, and we endure. Viaro let out a low, humorless chuckle. You gamble on defiance, knowing it will cost your species everything. Allow me to show you what resistance buys. He gestured, and the chamber's holoscreen lit up, displaying an ominous fleet of Imperial warships encircling Earth and its colonies. Their formations gleamed with deadly precision, each ship bristling with advanced weaponry. Gasps rippled through the human delegation. Evelyn's hands clenched at her sides, but her voice cut through the tension like a blade. A fleet may break a planet, but it can't break a people. The Marshal's image leaned forward, his reptilian features filling the screen. This is not a test of will, human. It is a statement of fact. Kneel or Earth burns. A metallic chime interrupted him, the signal of an incoming alert. Evelyn's earpiece buzzed softly, and a coded message streamed through. Imperial operatives detected nearby. Immediate extraction advised. Her expression remained unreadable, though her heart pounded. She had expected threats. Assassins were another matter entirely. She glanced briefly at her aide, a silent signal to prepare the team. I think we're done here, she said coldly. Tell your fleet to stay where it is, Marshal. Earth isn't some vassal waiting to bow. And neither am I. She turned on her heel and strode toward the chamber's exit. Behind her, Viaro's hologram hissed, his patience fraying. You walk away, Lieutenant Carter, but you will only return to ashes. This meeting is over because you've chosen extinction. The doors slid shut behind her, muffling his voice. Evelyn's heart raced, but her face betrayed nothing. She moved quickly, her team falling into step behind her. Extraction protocol? Orion, her second in command, murmured as they entered the docking corridor. No, she confirmed. They won't wait long to strike. Before he could reply, the station shuddered. Alarms blared, and crimson lights bathed the walls. Evelyn drew her pulse pistol, her instincts sharp. Move! To the ship! Imperial troops poured into the corridor from hidden alcoves, their sleek, black armor glinting. A volley of plasma fire streaked past Evelyn's shoulder. She dove behind a column, returning fire with precise shots. One trooper fell, another staggered, but more closed in. Cover me! She shouted, motioning her team forward. Orion and the others provided suppressing fire, their weapons lighting up the narrow space. Evelyn sprinted ahead, her mind calculating the shortest path to their docking bay. The station's architecture was pristine but labyrinthine, a perfect trap for assassins. She ducked into a side corridor, evading another wave of attackers. "Carter!" Orion's voice crackled through her calm. "We're pinned down. What's your position?" "Halfway to the Resolve." "Keep them busy, I'll get the ship powered up." "No pressure then," he replied, his tone grim but steady. The docking bay loomed ahead, and Evelyn's stomach twisted. 3 Imperial guards stood between her and the ship. She fired without hesitation, taking one down before they could react. The remaining 2 split up, one flanking her while the other returned fire. Evelyn ducked behind a cargo crate, her breathing ragged. Plasma bolts seared the air inches from her head. She leaned out, aiming carefully, and dropped the flanker with a single shot. The last guard hesitated, and that was all she needed. She charged, knocking the weapon from his hands and delivering a sharp blow to his temple. The guard crumpled. Evelyn didn't linger. She sprinted up the ramp into the Resolve, barking commands to the onboard AI. "Initiate lockdown. Prep engines for immediate departure. Get me a visual on my team." The screen flickered to life, showing Orion and the others pinned behind a column as Imperial troops advanced. Evelyn cursed under her breath. "Orion, status?" "Could be worse," he grunted, firing another burst. "But we're outnumbered and running low on ammo." "I'm coming back for you," she said, her voice steel. "No," he snapped. "Get the ship ready. We'll hold them off, just make sure there's something to come back to." Evelyn hesitated, every instinct screaming against leaving them behind. But she knew Orion was right. Without the Resolve, none of them would survive. She activated the ship's external turrets, targeting the corridor entrance. The automated cannons roared to life, cutting down the advancing troopers and giving Orion's team the opening they needed. Moments later, they burst into the bay, battered but alive. "Close it up!" Orion shouted as the last of the team boarded. Evelyn slammed the controls, sealing the ramp as the Resolve lifted off. Imperial reinforcements stormed into the bay, firing futilely at the rising ship. Evelyn's fingers flew over the console, plotting a course out of the system. The station and the black hole shrank in the viewport as the Resolve accelerated into hyperspace. Only then did Evelyn allow herself to breathe. "We're alive," Orion said, collapsing into a seat beside her. "For now," Evelyn replied, her voice hard. "But this is just the beginning." She stared out at the stars, her determination unshaken. The Empire had declared war, but humanity wouldn't go quietly. Evelyn would see to that. The Resolve floated above a turbulent red dwarf star as Evelyn Carter stood in the ship's central briefing room, addressing the leaders of humanity's scattered colonies. The holographic conference table was crowded with translucent figures, some sharply defined, others flickering with poor signal quality. Each represented a colony with its own resources, culture, and agenda. Evelyn's voice cut through the low hum of static and murmured conversations. "We don't have time for debate," she said firmly. "The Empire has declared war. If we don't unite now, humanity will be wiped out colony by colony." A wiry man with graying hair from the Vesta mining colony leaned forward, his figure shimmering. "And who put you in charge of humanity's fate, Lieutenant Carter? You're a soldier, not a leader. Maybe we should be negotiating instead of rushing to war." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "The Empire doesn't negotiate. Their terms are simple: submission or annihilation. We've already seen what submission means for other species, entire cultures erased, their people used as laborers. Is that what you want for your children, Governor?" The governor glared at her but said nothing. Another voice chimed in, a young woman from the frontier colony of Sirius 9. "We've already lost too much to their raids. I say we fight. But how can we stand a chance against fleets that could vaporize us from orbit?" "We fight smart," Evelyn replied, pacing the room. "We can't match their numbers or firepower, but we have 2 things they don't: ingenuity and desperation. They've underestimated us. That's our advantage." A grizzled former naval officer from Titan spoke up. "And who's going to lead this resistance?" "You." Evelyn paused, her gaze steady. "Yes. Not because I'm the best choice, but because someone has to step up." The Empire won't wait for us to form committees. If we don't act now, they'll pick us off one by one. Silence fell over the room, punctuated by the hum of the holograms. Then, slowly, heads began to nod. Fine, the governor from Vesta said grudgingly. But if this fails, the blood's on your hands, Carter. I'll take that risk, Evelyn said. Now let's get to work. The Resistance's first test came sooner than expected. A distress signal from the outskirts of human space cut through the ship's quiet hum. Evelyn was in the command center, studying star charts with Orion, when the alert sounded. Source? She asked sharply, already pulling up the data. A colony transport near Epsilon Delta, Orion replied. Under attack by an Imperial frigate. Civilian crew. They won't last long. Evelyn's mind raced. Epsilon Delta was a small outpost, far from major trade routes. The Empire was testing their response time, seeing if humanity would sacrifice resources to defend its fringes. We have to help them, she said, already moving to the helm. Orion hesitated. It's a trap. They want us to spread ourselves thin. I know, Evelyn said, her voice firm. But if we let them die, we lose more than a transport. We lose trust. We need these colonies to believe we'll fight for them. Orion didn't argue further. The Resolve surged into action, its engines roaring to life as it charted a course toward Epsilon Delta. The transport ship was a battered relic, its hull scorched and venting atmosphere as the Resolve dropped out of hyperspace. The Imperial frigate loomed over it, sleek and menacing, its energy cannons glowing with readiness. Shields up, Evelyn ordered. Target their engines. We don't need to win, just buy time. Orion grinned grimly. Playing the underdog again, huh? It's what we're good at. She shot back. The Resolve swooped into action, its turrets spitting streams of plasma. The Imperial frigate turned to face them, its cannons firing back with lethal precision. The first volley shook the Resolve, lights flickering as the ship's shields absorbed the impact. They're focusing on us now, Orion reported. Good, Evelyn said, her eyes locked on the tactical display. Keep moving. We can't outgun them, but we can outfly them. The Resolve darted and weaved, its smaller size and superior maneuverability allowing it to evade most of the frigate's fire. The transport ship took advantage of the distraction, limping toward a nearby asteroid field. Transport is clear, Orion said, relief in his voice. Now we run, Evelyn replied. Plot a jump out of here before they get serious. But the frigate wasn't letting them go so easily. A lucky shot slammed into the Resolve-S aft, sending the ship into a spiral. Evelyn gripped the console as alarms blared. Engines are down! Orion shouted. Evelyn's mind raced. Divert power from life support to the thrusters. We just need one burst to get us into the asteroid field. You're going to suffocate us. Not if we move fast. Do it! The ship shuddered as power surged to the engines, propelling them toward the asteroid field. The frigate hesitated to follow, wary of the dense debris. Evelyn used the brief reprieve to initiate emergency repairs, rerouting systems to stabilize the Resolve. Jump coordinates locked, Orion said. Execute, Evelyn ordered. The Resolve vanished into hyperspace, leaving the Imperial frigate behind. Hours later, the crew gathered in the mess hall, exhaustion etched into every face. Evelyn stood at the head of the room, her voice steady despite the weight pressing on her. We saved those people today, she said. But this was just the beginning. The Empire wanted to see how we'd respond, and now they know. They'll come harder next time. Then what's the plan? Orion asked, leaning against the wall. Evelyn's gaze swept the room. We hit back. Hard. The Empire thinks we're weak, but we'll show them we can fight smarter, leaner. And we won't do it alone. Every colony we save, every victory we win, brings more of us together. That's how we survive. Together. The room fell silent. Then, slowly, a murmur of agreement spread through the crew. Evelyn felt the weight of their trust, their hope. She couldn't let them down. The Empire had underestimated humanity, and she would make them regret it. As the ship hummed quietly in the background, Evelyn returned to the command center, already planning their next move. The resistance wasn't just surviving, it was beginning to fight back. The Resolve drifted quietly through the outskirts of the Rho 3 nebula, its systems humming as Evelyn Carter stared at the holographic star chart before her. Despite the relative calm of the nebula, the tension in the ship's command center was palpable. The mission was simple: rescue a convoy of freighters trapped by an Imperial blockade, but Evelyn knew the stakes were far higher. The Empire had begun to deploy special forces, and they were no longer playing by the same rules. "Status?" Evelyn asked, her voice sharp. Orion, standing at the helm, didn't look up from his console. "We've got a clear route to the convoy, but Imperial scouts are scattered along the perimeter. We can't make a direct approach without being spotted." "What's their backup?" Evelyn pressed. "There's a second fleet on standby, but they're still at the edge of the system," Orion replied. "We have maybe an hour before reinforcements arrive." Evelyn clenched her fists. "We don't have an hour. Begin a full scan of the convoy's comms. I need to know exactly where they are and if any of them are compromised." The room fell into a focused silence as the crew worked. Evelyn knew they had no margin for error. The convoy was made up of civilian ships carrying critical supplies for a number of colonies, but if they didn't reach them in time, the Empire would make an example of them. The thought of those innocent people falling under Imperial control made her stomach churn. "There's something odd," said Lieutenant Kiera, the ship's communications officer. "One of the freighters is broadcasting a distress signal, nothing unusual about that. But there's a second, encrypted signal coming from the same source." Evelyn's brows furrowed. "Encrypted? It's not Imperial," Kiera clarified, tapping a few commands on her console. "But it's military-grade encryption." A flicker of suspicion crossed Evelyn's mind. "Could it be a trap?" "It's possible," Kiera said, her voice hesitant. "But it doesn't match any known Empire signature. Whoever it is, they're hiding their tracks well." "Then we proceed with caution," Evelyn ordered. "If this is a trap, we'll outsmart them. If not, we get those ships out of danger." Orion glanced back at her. "And if they're not hostile, how do you explain the Empire's forces closing in?" "That's what I intend to find out." The Resolve entered the area near the convoy's location, its stealth systems active. The ship's hull blended with the nebula's gaseous clouds, cloaking them from Imperial sensors. Evelyn's eyes were fixed on the holographic screen as the convoy ships came into view. They were a mixed group, freighters of various sizes, their hulls scarred from previous skirmishes. "We're in range," Orion reported. "Comm systems are open. Ready when you are." Evelyn nodded, then turned to Kiera. "Patch me through to the convoy leader." The image of a grizzled man in his late 40s appeared on the screen. He was covered in soot, his face drawn with exhaustion. "This is Captain Rahl of the Aurora," he said, his voice tight. "Who are you?" Evelyn didn't hesitate. "We're here to get you out. You're under Imperial blockade. We're coming in hot, so prepare your people. We'll give you cover fire." Captain Rahl's eyes narrowed. "And why should I trust you?" "We're not here for your cargo, Captain," Evelyn replied. "We're here to ensure you and your people get to safety. The Empire's not playing nice, and if you wait any longer, they'll level this sector to make an example of you." There was a long pause, and Evelyn could almost see the wheels turning in the captain's mind. Finally, he spoke. "Understood. Just get us out of here." Evelyn gave a sharp nod and turned to Orion. "Prepare the main cannons. We're going to have to punch through the blockade before Imperial reinforcements show up. Target their fighters first, keep the freighters safe." "Aye, Captain," Orion said, his voice already focused. The Resolve moved into position, and Evelyn felt her pulse quicken. This was it, the moment that would either solidify humanity's resolve or break it completely. "On my mark," Evelyn said, her hand hovering over the firing controls. She watched the Imperial fighters take up position in front of the blockade, their sleek forms poised for a defensive strike. The freighters, while outnumbered, began to maneuver into a defensive pattern, guided by the Resolve-S coordination. The Imperial fleet was confident, thinking they had the upper hand. But they had made a critical mistake. They underestimated the cunning of humans. "Mark!" Evelyn shouted. The Resolve erupted into action. Its main cannons fired first, striking the nearest Imperial fighter with pinpoint accuracy. The enemy ship was obliterated before it could even retaliate. Another shot took out a second fighter, while a barrage of smaller pulse rounds ripped through the blockade's perimeter. "Fighter support engaged," Orion called out. "They're scrambling, but we've got them on the back foot." "Good," Evelyn said. "Keep it up. We've got a narrow window. Make sure the freighters have a safe lane out." The Imperial forces quickly adjusted, their larger ships maneuvering into place to provide cover for their fighters. Evelyn wasn't surprised. The Empire wasn't just a military force, it was a machine. And humans, for all their defiance, were still small in the grand scheme of things. But that didn't matter. They'd survived worse. "Captain?" Kira's voice cut through the tension. "The encrypted signal, it's coming from the Aurora. They're transmitting military commands, but—" "What are you saying?" Evelyn demanded. "It's the Empire," Kiara said, her eyes wide. "The Aurora is working with them. This whole thing was a setup." Evelyn's blood ran cold. The captain's hesitant response now made sense. The distress signal was a lure, and she had walked right into it. "Orion, break us out of here," she ordered. "Now." Before Orion could respond, a heavy blast rocked the Resolve, sending alarms blaring. One of the freighters had taken a direct hit from an Imperial dreadnought. The ship's hull buckled, and a massive explosion followed. "Focus fire on the dreadnought!" Evelyn shouted, fists clenched. "We can't take them head-on," Orion said urgently. "We need to pull back." Evelyn glanced at the convoy ships. "They're finished if we don't act now." With no time left, she made a decision. "Full power to the engines. We're going straight through their formation." The Resolve shot forward, its cannons blazing as it plowed through the enemy lines. The Imperial fleet responded with overwhelming force, but the smaller Resolve was agile, cutting through their defenses like a knife through butter. One by one, the Imperial fighters fell, but the dreadnought remained intact, its massive guns aimed squarely at the Resolve. Evelyn braced herself for impact, but before the shot could land, the Aurora turned its guns on the dreadnought, breaking its targeting lock. "What the hell?" Evelyn muttered, her eyes wide. The Aurora had turned on the Empire. The enemy dreadnought's shield faltered as it took the barrage from the freighter's unexpected weapons. It didn't stand a chance. The blockade began to fracture. The Imperial forces pulled back, confusion spreading through their ranks as the convoy made its escape. Evelyn exhaled sharply. "We're not done yet," she said. "But we've bought ourselves some time." "Captain," Orion said with a grin. "That was one hell of a shot." Evelyn didn't respond immediately. She was still processing the unexpected turn of events. The Aurora had betrayed the Empire, but why? It wasn't just a victory. It was a message. And that message was just the beginning. The fight for humanity's survival had only begun, and this time, they weren't fighting alone.